Hi there, welcome to the another session on computer and communication network. Today we are going to deal with session 7, and today our topic of discussion would be segmentation, multiplexing and network performance. So quite an interesting topics, lot of things to be covered. So before we get in there, as usual, a quick recap on what we did in our earlier session. In our earlier session, we saw about network services, and we discussed two kinds of network services, that is connection oriented, which was using a TCP, that is a transmission control protocol, and connectionless, which was using UDP, which is called as an user datagram protocol. If you remember, the connection oriented service was an reliable service which basically was administered using handshaking mechanism, and connectionless service was an non-reliable or an unreliable service. Now, what do we do in today's session? In today's session, we are going to discuss three important points. First, we are going to see what multiplexing is and how important multiplexing is in today's computers network. We're going to talk about segmentation, and we are also looking to one of the most important factors in network, which is called as the network performance. So let's get going. Now first let me put you on to the definitions of multiplexing and segmentation. Though the definition looks very odd here, you will not be able to understand everything, but first let's understand what multiplexing is. So in telecommunication and computer networks, multiplexing is a method by which multiple analog or digital signals are combined into one signal over a shared medium. The aim is to share a scarce resource. Now this is very important. The aim of multiplexing is to basically share a scarce resource, because you know that in computer networks resources are very expensive, and especially the communication link is very expensive, so you cannot afford to have multiple communication link. So you need to have a communication link which can be shared by multiple resources, and if you have to achieve that, the one way of doing that is called as multiplexing. Segmentation, we have seen these concepts before. I had given you some idea of segmentation in the earlier classes, but what exactly is segmentation? Segmentation is nothing but breaking down of data into packets. So I have told you that whenever the packets has to be delivered from the message, what happens is the message are broken down into packets, and this process of breaking down the message into packets is called as segmentation. Now segmentation and multiplexing are two important things which we have to consider in our computer networks. Why do we require multiplexing? Consider a small picture which I have shown here. Now there are four systems, A, B, C and D. Let's say that all these are senders, and there are four systems at the receiving end, that is P, Q, R and S. All these are receivers. Now at this point of time, let's say that A, B, C, D would want to send data to P, Q, R and S. And what kind of data they would want to send? The A would want to send an audio message to P, and B would want to send a video message to Q, and C would want to send an say PDF file to R, and D would want to email one message to S. So now this can be possible by having multiple links. So you can have a separate link between A and P, you have a separate link or a dedicated link between B and Q, a separate dedicated link between C and R, and a dedicated link between D and S. Now what is the problem which basically occurs when you have dedicated links? The main problem which is occurring when you have a dedicated link is it is very expensive. So you cannot afford to have four different communication links for four different network transactions. Okay, even though if you can afford four links, but what happens if there are n number of senders and n number of receivers? You cannot afford to have n number of links. So now how do you solve this problem? To solve this problem, you need to have a link which can be shared by all the four systems at the sender end and all the four systems at the receiving end. That's exactly the reason why we are going to use multiplexing. Now Have a look at this picture here. Now what we have done is we have only put one communication link, and this communication link is a shared communication link, which means that the same link is being shared by all the systems, that is A, B, C and D on the sender side, P, Q, R and S on the receiving side. Now why did we use this shared communication link? Because it is very important to know that having individual links or dedicated links proves to be very expensive. So that's one of the reasons why we need to go for a shared communication link. So I'm revisiting this concept of why multiplexing is needed. So let's say that you have four systems A, B, C and D which are at the sender end, and P, Q, R and S at the receiving end. Now there is a shared communication link here where A, B, C and D would want to send audio, video, PDF and email messages accordingly. Now let's say that at that given point of time B is actually sharing this communication link. So what is happening is B is sending the data, that is B is sending the video file to a system called say P. So now B and P are communicating with each other over the shared communication link, which means that the video file is being sent from B to P. Now until this entire video file is sent, the one problem which is encountered here is the systems A, C and D has to wait. That is because the communication link is being used by B unless and until the entire transmission happens from B to P. The systems A, C and D are put into wait, which means that they enter into starvation. Now there could be another problem. What could happen if this communication link breaks down due to any given instance of time? Now there could be network breakdowns. In that case, the complete transmission of the video file does not happen. So the transmission gets hampered in the midway. So in that context, what would happen is we need to re-establish the connection. That means the video file has to be begin transmitting right from the stage 1, which means that the entire transmission begins fresh. So in that case, again there is a further delay where A, C and D are put into wait. So now this is one kind of problem which could be there. That is one of the reasons why we would go on a concept called multiplexing. Now I'll show you how to solve this particular problem in this next slide. Now to solve this problem, what we basically do is we have a device called as an multiplexer on the sender end, and we have a device called as a demultiplexer in the receiving end. Now what is a multiplexer? A multiplexer is a device which basically performs multiplexing. Now how do you define multiplexing? Multiplexing follows many to one, that is n input lines and one output lines. Now as shown in this particular figure here, there are 4 input lines, and what they basically do that they divert them into a single output line. So now you have 4 computers here, A, B, C and D. Now all these 4 computers have become the 4 input lines to the multiplexer, and there is one shared communication media here. So what happens is this shared communication media would basically have a bandwidth. Now what do you mean by a bandwidth? A bandwidth is nothing but the range of frequencies which can be transmitted in the shared media. That is, it has got a limit of an lower frequency and an upper frequency. So whatever frequencies you basically transmit between lower to upper frequency is called as a bandwidth. Now in this case, the signal from A, the signal from B, the signal from C and D are all injected at one shot to this particular transmission media or the communication link. So the multiplexer will basically receive input signals from all the 4 computers, combine it and put it as one signal in this shared communication media. Now inside the shared communication media, what would happen is there would be number of channels where each channel would basically take different frequencies. So each input here would be taken as different frequencies, and these signals will basically pass to the demultiplexer. Now what the demultiplexer will do that it will take this input which has come from the communication link and it will diversify them to the receiving end. that is the signal of A will be sent to P and the signal of B will be sent to Q, R and S. So that is how multiplexing works. So multiplexing, we can say it is many to one. That means many signals are combined into one signal. When I mean one signal, they are basically divided into number of frequency signals. That is called as a frequency division multiplexing, or each signal is transmitted in a short burst of time, what is called as a time division multiplexing. And finally, those signals are again diversified into 4 different receivers for which they are intended to be received at. So this is what is multiplexing, and you have got 2 devices. One is called as a multiplexer. The multiplexer will always be at the sending end and the demultiplexer will be at the receiving end. Now I have given you the practical illustration of what is multiplexing and demultiplexing. Here you have a source system and a destination system. Now you can see that the source system is basically activating data on Google, Outlook and chat room. Now he has opened 3 different tabs in your browser and he is activating Google, Outlook and chat room. So he is sending some data, and you can see that all these data will be broken down into number of packets. They go in this particular communication media, that is a shared communication media, as fragments like this. So a fragment of Google, then the fragment of Outlook, then again the fragment of chat room, again Google, Outlook, chat room fragments. They all go in the shared communication media. So all these 3 input lines from Google, Outlook and chat room will be taken by the multiplexer and they would be combined and put into this particular shared media. Now it enters into the demultiplexer, where the demultiplexer will take this and it will again diversify them to Google, Outlook and chat room. So that means it takes that signal and it will transfer to the relevant application at the destination. So this is how your multiplexing and demultiplexing works. So this could be one of your good example of how multiplexing and demultiplexing happens in your real life environment. So now once we have understood multiplexing and demultiplexing, the next thing to understand is network performance. So we all talk about network performance. We need to know about network performance in order to understand the delay in networks. So there are different kinds of delay in networks. So you have something called as a transmission delay, the propagation delay, the queuing delay and the processing delay. Now when you understand all these 4 delays, you will be able to understand what network performance is. Now in order to improve the performance, you have to basically reduce the delay. So the delay will be induced in the network because of these. You have a transmission delay, you have a propagation delay, you have a queuing delay and you have a processing delay. Now we will take one by one and see what is the basic cause of a transmission delay and how does the transmission delay is going to affect the network performance. So now in this slide I am showing you what exactly is a transmission delay. So know that there are 2 computers here, A and B. Now A is called as a sender and B is called as a receiver. Now first we have to understand here is the A would want to send from send some message from A. The A would want to send a message to B. So we know that the concept of segmentation says that the message would be broken down into packets. So now we can see from this picture here that this message are broken down into packets and each packet has got a sequence number here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it goes on. This was earlier we have explained you this was because of the connection oriented service which was actually done by TCP. Now what exactly is a transmission delay now? Now this is the point of importance. Now pay your attention here. The transmission delay is the time taken to put the data packet onto the transmission link is called as the transmission delay. Now this is your transmission link. Now this transmission link could be a link which connects A and B. It could be a physical link like your guided media, or it could be an non-physical link like an unguided media, whether it could be a fiber optic cable or an infrared transmission. Now you have this packet number 1. How much time if it takes for us to actually put this packet number 1 onto this transmission link is called as your transmission delay. Now this particular transmission delay depends upon 2 things which are very important. The first one is the size of the data packet and second one is the bandwidth of the network. So two things are very important in order to calculate the transmission delay. One is the size of the data packet. So we know that every packet would have a size, and this particular link would have a bandwidth. So your transmission delay depends upon the size of the data packet and the bandwidth of your transmission link. Now we will represent that bandwidth as B, and we will represent the size of the data packet as L, and for convention we will just take one example where we'll consider that the bandwidth of this communication link is 1 bits per second, and the size of the data packets would be around 10 bits. Now this packet 1, the size would be around 10 bits. So now it is very easy to find out the transmission delay. All we have to do is we will have to use this formula where the transmission delay is the size of the data packet divided by the bandwidth of network. So you take 10 bits divided by 1 bits per second, so you get 10 seconds. So that means that the 10 seconds would be the transmission delay for this particular data packet of 10 bit size and having the bandwidth of 1 bit per second. So you understood what a transmission delay is. So how we can basically represent this transmission delay is we represent the transmission delay using TT, and the formula what we give for transmission delay is L by B, where L is the packet size and B is the bandwidth. Now let us take another example where I am going to take the length of the packet as 20 bits. So which means that this is a pretty larger packet when compared to the previous one, and I am going to retain the bandwidth as 1 bit per second. Now if I want to calculate the transmission delay TT, you know that the formula is L by B. So I am going to replace the length of the packet here, which is nothing but 20 by 1, which is 20 seconds. Now what did you understand from this? What we understood here is if the length of the packet is more, the transmission delay is going to be more. So we can see that the transmission delay is directly proportional to the length of the data packet. That means if the size of the data packet or if the length of the data packet is more, the transmission delay is going to be more. Now let's take another example. I am reducing the length of the data packet here. I am reducing it to 10 bits, but I am going to increase the bandwidth here to 2 bits per second. Now if I want to find out the transmission delay here, I am going to use the formula transmission delay is equal to L by B, where I am going to replace L with 10 and B with 2, so you are going to get 5 seconds. Now that means that if the bandwidth increases, your transmission delay decreases. So we can say that your transmission delay is inversely proportional to the bandwidth. That means increasing of the bandwidth would basically decrease your transmission delay. So I think you have understood now what transmission delay is. I'll just tell you once again a quick recap on transmission delay. The transmission delay is nothing but the time taken to inject this packet from that particular source to the communication link is called as the transmission delay. Okay, now let us take another example, a little complicated one. Now I am taking the length of the data packet as 1 KB and I am taking the bandwidth as 1 kbps. So length is 1 kilobyte and the bandwidth is 1 kilobits per second. Now when I am replacing this value to find out the transmission delay, I am using the value of 1 KB as 1024. Now this is very important here. You cannot use 1 KB as 1000 because we know that always the data is always in powers of 2, because we are talking about binary system. So the powers of 2 means the data will either be in the form of 1 and 0, and the bandwidth is always in powers of 10. So therefore we take 1 kilobyte as 1024 bits or 1024 bits divided by 1000, so you are going to get as 1.024 seconds. So this is about transmission delay. You understood what transmission delay is, and we also tried and solved few problems on transmission delay. So moving forward, now we shall try and understand what is a propagation delay. So now propagation delay is also an important concept in network here. So first we shall see the definition of a propagation delay. The propagation delay is the time that it takes for a bit to reach from one end of a link to other. Now very important, it is a time that it takes for a bit to reach from one end of a link to other. Now consider that there are two systems here, A and B. A is a sender, B is a receiver. A would want to send a message from A to B. Now we know that the concept of segmentation says that the message would be broken down into number of packets. So this message what you have seen here is broken down into packets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and these packets are actually induced into the communication link, so there is a transmission delay there. Now each packet would be a combination of ones and zeros. Now in this case this packet number 1 is a combination of ones and zeros, so there are 10 bits in this particular packet, so we can say that the length of the packet 1 is 10. Now what is the propagation delay? The propagation delay says that it is the time that it takes for a bit to reach from one end of the link to another. Now this is the first bit, this is the second bit, third bit, fourth bit, and this is the last bit. Now this bit has to travel from A to B, so it starts traveling from A to B. Now the time taken for this bit to travel from A to B is called as a propagation delay. Now remember that when this bit reaches B, the entire data is not constructed because there are other bits to follow. So all these bits has to follow, and the last bit also has to follow in this communication link. Then only B can say that he has received the entire packet 1. So now we understood what is propagation delay. The propagation delay is nothing but the time that it takes for a bit to reach from one end of a link to another. So we know that this depends upon two factors. One is called the distance. So the transmission delay depends upon the distance between A and B, and it also depends upon the velocity. Velocity is nothing but the speed of the signal. So now the propagation delay is directly proportional to D, and it is inversely proportional to the velocity. So which means that if the distance increases, if the distance between A and B increases, the propagation delay increases, and if the velocity increases, the propagation delay decreases. It's a common sense, because if the speed of the signal is more, then your propagation delay will be less. So this is about your propagation delay. Let's see some examples and try to solve some problems on propagation delay. Okay, now I am revisiting this propagation delay once again here. See this picture once again. There is a sender called A and there is a receiver called B. Now the sender A is sending the data to B, and we see that the packet has been broken down into a number of bits. So we know that the propagation delay is the time that it takes for a bit to reach from one end of a link to the another end. So now assuming that this communication link is a fiber optic cable. You remember I had explained you about fiber optic cable in my earlier session. In fiber optic cable, the data is transferred in the form of light. So light is the media of transmission of data. So now we know the velocity of light, it is actually 3 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second, but the entire efficiency of light cannot be used in this communication link. So what happens is there will be reduction of speed. So only the light travels only at its 70% of speed in this communication link. So what we have done here is we have taken the speed of the light and I am multiplying by 0.7. So we get 2.1 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. So this will be the velocity of light in your fiber optic cable. So we are going to use this velocity of light, and we are going to take one more parameter called distance, and then we'll find out what is the propagation delay. Now have a look at this small illustration here what I have given. Now I have considered the distance to be 2.1 kilometers. So that means the distance from A to B is around 2.1 kilometers, and the velocity is 2.1 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. That is the velocity. Now we know the propagation delay is given by the formula d by v, that is your distance by velocity. So I am going to replace the value of d and v. So I am going to convert this kilometers into meters. Why? Because the velocity is also in meters, so I have to convert them into meters so that both the units are same. So converting the kilometers into meters, I can do that by going ahead and saying 2.1 into 10 to the power of 3 meters divided by 2.1 into 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. So when I evaluate this formula, I am going to get the propagation delay as 10 to the power of minus 5 seconds. So to understand this better, I need to convert that either into a millisecond or a microsecond. If I convert into a millisecond, so this 10 to the power of minus 5 seconds would be around 10 to the power of minus 2 milliseconds or 10 microseconds. So the propagation delay would be 10 microseconds for a packet which has to travel a distance of 2.1 kilometers in a fiber optic cable, which basically uses the technology of light for transferring the data. The third kind of delay is queuing delay. Now you understood what is a transmission delay and what is a propagation delay. Now we have injected the packet into the communication link, and we have propagated the packets from the inside the communication link. That is, the packets would have traveled from a sender to the receiver. Now this packet will arrive at the receiver. Now you can see that these are the packets which are there at the sender. All the packets have arrived at the receiver. Now once they have arrived at the receiver, these packets are waiting in a queue, because B will not immediately process this particular packet, because it depends upon the CPU utilization of B, because the CPU of B would be busy in doing some work, so it may not process the packet immediately. So now the waiting time of a packet sitting in the buffer before being received by a computer for processing is called as queuing delay. That means how much time this packet 1 actually waits in the buffer before it is being received by this computer B for processing is called as the queuing delay, and that is represented as TQ. So now this TQ does not have any formula, because quite understandable. The reason is the waiting time doesn't depend on any factor. It only depends on one factor, that is the availability of your B's resources. Either it could be a CPU resource or a memory resource. So the availability of the resource is only the factor which determines the queuing delay. So you understood what a queuing delay is. Now we shall see what is an processing delay. So we know that the data actually arrives at B from A, and the data in terms of packets are actually waiting in a queue. Now this data has to be picked and it has to be given to this B for processing. So the time taken by the receiver to take a packet and process is called as processing delay. So this packet 1 has to be taken from the queue and it has to be given to B for processing. So this time delay is called as a processing delay. Generally it will be working on a FIFO technique, that is, first packet which gets into the queue will be the first packet to be picked up from the queue and given to B for processing. So we call this as a processing delay. And know that the processing delay is also not having any formula, because that is processing delay exclusively depends upon the computer system. So these are the two kinds of delays which does not have any formula. One is called the queuing delay and the second one is called as the processing delay. Now I am going to put back all these things together. So we saw different kinds of delay. So we saw what the network delay was. In the network delay we saw what was transmission delay, we saw propagation delay, we saw queuing delay, and we saw processing delay. So transmission delay was the time taken for a packet to be induced into the communication link. The propagation delay was the time taken for the bit to transfer from one end of the link to another end of the link. The queuing delay is the waiting time of the packet which has to get into the receiver for processing, and the processing delay is the time taken by the packet for it to be received and processed by the receiver. So your total network delay can be calculated by the formula the summation of your transmission delay plus the propagation delay plus the queuing delay plus the processing delay. Since we don't have clear-cut figures on your queuing delay and processing delay, we can take it as 0, because it exclusively depends upon the speed of the computer and other things. So we can say network delay is nothing but the sum of your transmission delay and the propagation delay. Okay, another important thing we need to understand in network delay is called as a round trip time. So first we shall see the definition of a round trip time. So round trip time is the length of time it takes for a signal to be sent plus the length of time it takes for an acknowledgement of that signal to be received. So now you have a sender and a receiver. We'll understand this better. Now a sender is sending one data packet to the receiver. Now it will take some time for the packet to reach the receiver. You know that that is called as a propagation delay. Now once it receives the packet, what the receiver will do, it will send an acknowledgement to the sender. Now you know that acknowledgement is also a packet. So this also would take some time as a propagation delay. So this will be the propagation delay of the packet sent from sender to receiver, and this will be the propagation delay of the packet sent from receiver to sender. So now the total round trip time would be the summation of two propagation delays. So we can say this round trip time will be approximately equal to 2 times the propagation delay. Now this concept, if you want to recall back when I was talking about your transmission control protocol, that is your connection oriented service, we saw that when the sender sends an synchronization message, the receiver is going to send an acknowledgement for the synchronization. So that means that acknowledgement also is a packet, and the synchronization message is also a packet. So like this, for every packet there will be an acknowledgement. So the sending of the packet and receiving of an acknowledgement, we call it as a round trip time, and that round trip time is nothing but 2 times your propagation delay. So thank you for watching this particular session on multiplexing, segmentation and network delay. I will see you in the next section with more information on computers and communication network. Till then, take care. Bye bye.